Every financial guru alive today will tell you the same thing. Work harder, hustle more, wake up at 4 a.m., grind 7 days a week, sleep when you are dead, never stop, never rest, outwork everyone around you, and eventually the money will follow. Now let me tell you something that will either change your life or make you furious. For over 3,000 years, Jewish families have followed a wealth rule that directly contradicts every single piece of that advice. And this one rule, practiced consistently by a community that represents less than 0.2% of the world's population, has produced more billionaires per capita, more generational wealth, and more financial resilience than any hustle culture philosophy ever created. The rule is so counterintuitive that when I explain it to people for the first time, most of them laugh. Some get angry, and the ones who actually apply it come back to me months later and say, "Rabbi, I cannot believe that was the missing piece all along." My name is Rabbi Amram, and for the past 43 years I have devoted my life to studying the ancient texts of the Talmud and Kabbalah. My grandfather was a respected Kabbalist in Jerusalem. His father before him taught these principles in a small yeshiva in Krakow, Poland before the war. This knowledge has been guarded within my family for 7 generations. I remember one particular Friday afternoon when I was a boy, maybe 11 years old. I was doing calculations for a small trading business I had started at school, buying candy in bulk and selling it to classmates. Business was good. I was proud. And I was working furiously at the kitchen table when my grandfather walked in and saw what I was doing. He watched me for a moment, then he placed his hand gently on my notebook and closed it. I looked up, confused. He said, "Amram, the sun is going down. It is time to stop." I protested. I told him I had orders to fill. I told him if I did not work tonight, I would lose customers. I would fall behind. He looked at me with those calm, ancient eyes and said something I will never forget. He said, "The man who cannot stop working is not strong. He is enslaved. And an enslaved man will never be wealthy, no matter how much money he earns." I did not understand what he meant. Not then. It took me 20 years to fully comprehend the depth of what he was teaching me. What I am about to share with you today is the single most important wealth principle I have ever learned, and it contradicts virtually everything the modern world teaches about success. I will explain not just what this rule is, but why it works, how it has been practiced for millennia, and exactly how you can apply it regardless of your religion, your income level, or where you are starting from today. By the end of this teaching, you will understand why the people who rest strategically build more wealth than the people who never stop working. But you need to stay with me through the entire teaching, because if you hear the rule without understanding the layers beneath it, you will dismiss it as foolishness, and that would be a costly mistake. I saw the consequences of ignoring this rule when I was 23 years old and beginning my rabbinical career. A man in our community, a brilliant entrepreneur, came to me in a state of total collapse. He had built a successful importing business from nothing. He worked every single day without exception. Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, it did not matter. He was the hardest working man I had ever met. He was also the most miserable, wealthy person I had ever encountered. His wife had left him. His children barely knew him. His health was deteriorating, and the business he had sacrificed everything for was starting to crumble because he was too exhausted and too burned out to make clear decisions. He sat across from me and said, "Rabbi, I did everything they told me to do. I outworked everyone. I never stopped. Why is everything falling apart?" And in that moment, I heard my grandfather's voice echoing across the years. The man who cannot stop working is not strong. He is enslaved. If this is already making you reconsider something you have always believed, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. Every week, I share ancient Jewish wisdom about wealth and prosperity that challenges everything the modern world takes for granted. Subscribe now so this wisdom keeps finding you. I know what your life looks like right now. I know because I have heard the same story thousands of times over 4 decades. You are exhausted. Not the kind of exhaustion that a good night's sleep fixes, but a deep bone-level fatigue that has been building for years. You work constantly. Even when you are not physically working, your mind is working. You check emails at dinner. You think about business in bed. You calculate numbers in the shower. Your body is at home, but your mind is still at the office, still at the job, still grinding. And you tell yourself this is what it takes. You tell yourself this is the price of success. You tell yourself that eventually, someday, when you have enough, you will finally rest. But that day never comes, does it? The goalpost keeps moving. The number that was supposed to be enough becomes not enough. The promotion that was supposed to bring peace brings more responsibility and more stress. The side hustle that was supposed to create freedom creates another obligation, and year after year, you work harder and harder, and the wealth you are building feels more and more fragile because you know it depends entirely on your ability to keep going at this pace. And deep down, in a place you rarely allow yourself to visit, you know that you cannot keep going at this pace forever. Here is what the financial gurus will never tell you because it would destroy their entire business model. The Talmud, in Contradicts 16a, records a remarkable teaching. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai that all of a person's sustenance for the year is determined between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, except for 3 categories of spending, and one of those exceptions is what a person spends in honor of Shabbat. The rabbis teach that what you spend to honor the day of rest is returned to you. This is not simply a religious claim. This is an economic principle encoded in spiritual language. The ancient rabbis observed across centuries that the families who honored strategic rest, who built regular cessation into the rhythm of their lives, consistently outperformed the families who worked without stopping. Write in the comments right now these exact words. I give myself permission to rest and prosper. This might be the most difficult declaration you have ever made, because everything in modern culture tells you that rest is laziness, that stopping is falling behind, that pausing is losing. But the ancient Jewish wisdom says the exact opposite, and the results across 3,000 years speak for themselves. Now let me explain why this works, because it is not mystical and it is not magic. It is profoundly practical, and once you understand the mechanism, you will never see rest the same way again. The first reason strategic rest builds wealth is clarity. The Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat, describes the additional soul, the neshama yetera, that a person receives on Shabbat. Whether you interpret this spiritually or psychologically, the observable reality is the same. When you stop working, truly stop, not checking your phone every 5 minutes, not answering one more email, but genuinely ceasing all commerce and productivity, something shifts in your mind. The noise settles, the anxiety quiets, and in that stillness, you begin to see things you could not see when you were in constant motion. You see opportunities you were too busy to notice. You see mistakes you were too rushed to recognize. You see solutions that were invisible in the chaos of nonstop activity. Every major financial decision I have ever made was made on a day of rest. Every catastrophic financial mistake I have ever witnessed was made by someone in a state of exhaustion, pressure, and haste. This is not coincidence. This is the principle at work. Wealthy Jewish families understood for millennia that the quality of your decisions determines the quality of your wealth, and the quality of your decisions depends entirely on the clarity of your mind. The second reason is what I call the abundance signal. When you work 7 days a week without ceasing, you are sending a powerful message to yourself and to everyone around you. That message is, I do not have enough. I am desperate. I am afraid that if I stop, even for 1 day, everything will collapse. This is a scarcity signal, and scarcity attracts more scarcity. When you stop working 1 day a week, deliberately, confidently, without anxiety, you are sending a completely different message. That message is, I have enough, I am secure. My wealth does not depend on my constant frantic activity. It depends on principles and systems that work even when I rest. This is an abundant signal, and it changes everything, not just internally, but in how others perceive you, trust you, and want to do business with you. My grandfather never rushed. He never appeared desperate. He never gave anyone the impression that he was scrambling to survive, and people trusted him with their money, with their partnerships, with their most important business dealings, precisely because of that calm, unhurried confidence. He told me, Amram, nobody wants to invest with a man who looks hungry. They want to invest with a man who looks fed, and the only way to look fed is to actually feed your soul with rest. The third reason is relationship capital. The wealthiest Jewish families I have studied over 4 decades all share one trait that is invisible to outsiders. Their deepest business relationships were built not in boardrooms, not in offices, not during working hours, but around the Shabbat dinner table. When you stop working for an entire day every week, you create space for the human connections that ultimately drive all great wealth. You sit with your family, you invite friends, colleagues, potential partners into your home, you break bread together without the pressure of transactions or negotiations. You see each other as human beings, not as business opportunities, and from that foundation of genuine human connection, trust emerges, and trust is the most valuable currency in any economy. The Talmud in Tractate Bava Batra teaches extensively about commercial relationships and partnerships, and the underlying theme across hundreds of pages is that all lasting wealth is built on trust. Not contracts, not legal agreements, trust. And trust is built in the spaces between work, in the moments when you are simply human together. The families who work 7 days a week have no space for this. They have transactions but not relationships. They have deals but not trust. And without trust, wealth is always fragile, always temporary, always one betrayal away from collapse. Pause right now and write in the comments, rest builds what hustle never can. Share this because someone you know is burning themselves out right now and needs to hear this truth. The fourth reason is generational sustainability. And this is the one that most people never consider. I have watched hundreds of families over 4 decades, and the pattern is unmistakable. The entrepreneurs who work 7 days a week build wealth that lasts 1 generation. If it lasts that long, they burn out. Their health fails. Their families fracture. Their children either rebel against the lifestyle they witnessed or inherit the same destructive pattern. Either way, the wealth dissipates. But the families who practice strategic weekly rest build wealth that compounds across generations, because their children grow up watching something different. They grow up watching a parent who works with intensity and focus for 6 days and then stops completely, confidently, joyfully for 1 day. They learn that wealth is not the product of non-stop grinding. It is the product of disciplined rhythm, work and rest, effort and recovery, output and reflection. And they carry that rhythm into their own adult lives, and their wealth grows with the same sustainable pattern. The Talmud in Tractate Kiddushin 29a lists teaching a child a trade among a father's fundamental obligations. But what good is teaching a child to work if you also teach them to work themselves to death? Jewish families teach both halves of the equation. They teach intense, focused, purposeful work, and they teach deliberate, unapologetic, sacred rest. Together, these create a rhythm that can be sustained not just for a career, but for a dynasty. Let me be honest with you about my own failure with this principle. In my 30s, I went through a period where I was teaching constantly, traveling constantly, writing constantly. I told myself that my work was too important to pause. I was helping people. I was spreading wisdom. How could I justify stopping when so many people needed guidance? I worked 7 days a week for nearly 2 years straight, and at the end of those 2 years, I was burned out. My teaching had become stale and repetitive. My relationships were strained, and I had made 3 financial decisions that cost me significantly, decisions I made in states of exhaustion that I would never have made with a clear mind. It was my wife who finally confronted me. She said, "You are teaching everyone else how to live wisely, and you are living like a fool." She was right. I returned to the practice of weekly rest immediately, and within months the clarity returned, the energy returned, the creativity returned, and the wealth followed the clarity, as it always does. Here is what I want you to understand. This is not about religion. You do not need to observe Shabbat. You do not need to follow Jewish law. You do not even need to rest on Saturday. The principle underneath the practice is what matters, and that principle is universal. 1 day per week, you stop. You cease all commerce, all transactions, all productivity. You do not check your portfolio. You do not answer business calls. You do not scroll through financial news. You stop. You rest. You connect with the people you love. You give your mind the silence it needs to recalibrate, to process, to see clearly. And then, when the day of rest ends, you return to work with a clarity, an energy, and a perspective that the person who never stops will never have access to. The financial gurus will tell you that this is wasted time, that 52 days per year of not working is 52 days of lost income. But the Talmud teaches the opposite. Those 52 days are not subtracted from your prosperity. They are multiplied into it, because the quality of work you produce in 6 days of focused, rested clarity will always exceed the quantity of work you produce in 7 days of exhausted, unfocused grinding. Always. Without exception. Across 3,000 years, this has never failed. You now understand the Jewish wealth rule that contradicts every financial guru. It is not about working less. It is about resting strategically so that your work becomes more powerful, your decisions become clearer, your relationships become deeper, and your wealth becomes sustainable across generations. The world says never stop. The Talmud says stop every 7th day without fail. The world says rest is laziness. The Talmud says rest is the foundation of enduring prosperity. The world says hustle until you make it. The Talmud says the man who cannot stop is not strong, he is enslaved. Choose which wisdom you will follow. The evidence across 3,000 years is overwhelmingly clear. If this teaching challenged something you have always believed, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. Every week I share ancient Jewish wisdom about wealth, prosperity, and protection that most people will never have access to. This is not just financial advice, this is a fundamentally different way of understanding what creates lasting wealth. Leave a comment right now. Write, "I choose strategic rest over endless hustle." I read every single comment, and your declaration tells me you are ready to build wealth the way it was meant to be built. If you know someone who is grinding themselves into the ground, someone who has not taken a real day of rest in months or years, share this video with them right now. You might be saving their health, their family, and their financial future with a single click. And hit the like button so this ancient wisdom reaches every person who has been lied to about what it really takes to build lasting wealth. May you find the courage to stop when the world tells you to keep going. May your rest be deep and your clarity be sharp. May your relationships grow richer in the spaces between work. May your wealth be built on rhythm, not on exhaustion. And may you teach your children that true prosperity is not measured by how many hours you work, but by how wisely you balance effort and stillness across a lifetime. Shalom.